Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome back from lunch. Really excited to moderate this discussion this afternoon on something that I know many of you are thinking about, and that's building and maintaining brand trust in the age of AI. So now that we've already gone through introductions, let's dig in. I know we only have about 20 minutes. So I'm going to start off with the easiest question for all of you, and I'd like to hear from each of you on this particular question. So AI-generated content is literally flooding our feeds. What is keeping you up at night about AI-generated content?
I guess I can go first. So the first thing I think about is brand values, how important brand values are. Sure, there are political headwinds and there are cultural nuances that keep changing, and absolutely you have to think about AI, and there is the temptation to just keep moving in the direction that everybody is talking about, but I would caution against that, because if you do that and you go against your brand values, you're going to lose trust, especially with Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And once you lose that trust, it's going to be really, really hard to get it back. So I think a lot about brand trust and brands keeping with the values that they set out to be with.
Great. Thanks, Lori. Who'd like to go next?
I'll jump in. So for me, it's more about being considered. I'm a little less concerned about people's opinions about EY. They're going to form their opinions of what they know about us, and we can tell our story, but I'll say it in different conversations around our brand. We are not the hero of our own story. It's our clients. And so we really need to nail the consideration aspect of this, and we are not controlling the conversation when there's so much garbage out there. There's all of these AI-created content engines that are just flooding the LLMs with things that are telling the story of the professional services industry without us being able to have our say.
AI Slop. I just learned that.
Yep. I love that term.
Go ahead.
I'll jump in. I think we're going to have very similar answers, so we'll build from each other. But I think a lot about information, misinformation, disinformation, really being the owner of your story, because you're the only one who's going to be able to tell your story correctly when it comes to your brand. And for our industry, we need to have a lot of nuanced discussions, right? It is complicated. There's a lot of feelings, and AI makes that a little bit more difficult, right? How are you making sure that you're shaping the conversation in a way that you can have those nuanced discussions, you can have those debates, and that you're making progress, even if it's just moving the conversation forward?
You saved the two Debbie Downers for last, right? So I have the same concerns. I work in pharma. It's misinformation is the main thing that, from a human perspective and from a business perspective too. There's a famous screenshot out there of someone asking Google, how many rocks should I eat in a day? And then it comes back and says, you should eat 3 rocks. Now imagine someone's looking for cancer treatment and they're saying, how do I treat my cancer? And it comes back with garbage, So that's something that, and some platforms are better than others as far as saying, like, please don't take health advice from us, but yet they still give it, So that's something that, keeps me up at night thinking about how to protect your brand, making sure that you're the right person to give that information, you're the right source that they pull from.
Great, thank you. So how are you adapting content strategies for AI-driven search? And how can you make sure the right voice wins? So with so many AI tools like ChatGPT and Perplexity, and they're pulling in from different sources, like how do you make sure the EY voice wins?
Yeah, so it's interesting. And my team, we've been talking about how do we win the conversation around the things that we do, the services we provide, the markets that we service. And it's really coming down to we need a distributed content strategy that brings our content into the sites already feeding the LLMs. But in a couple of different conversations this morning I've had, I'm like, it feels like we're back in 1995. It's the early days of black hat and white hat SEO. And I can take some very black hat approaches and feed all sorts of content into these LLMs that say and do the things I want them to do, but that's probably not going to be sustainable. So can I tell a different story both on our owned properties about the things we do, how we service the industry, but then distribute that content into the places that actually matter and feed into the industry? And that means we need to think about social differently. We need to think about distributed content through reliable sources differently and build an arsenal that really covers the entirety of the internet, not just our own properties.
Great. Yeah, go ahead.
I think you also have to be there at the moment of need. You have to understand what your customers need and what people are asking, and you should have the answers. And if you don't have the answers, AI will fill in or somebody else will. So you just need to make sure that you know what the questions are, you know what people are asking, and you have the answers, and you show that you are the most trusted source.
Yeah, so being in it's probably the most regulated space here, it's a little bit difficult to come up with we don't create AI generated content, right? So, but we do have to plan ahead and make sure that we are super ready for that legal review that comes after what we create. So it's a matter for us of coordinating with the content team, the creative team, the brand team, making sure that they hear our input, we hear their input, making sure that our project management is on key, because when you have that many cooks in the kitchen, it can definitely lengthen the process on being able to get your content up fast and ready, and making sure that it's structured well, and it's informative, it's clear, it's easy for these engines to come in and crawl and ingest it, and we have our structured data. So those are the big wins for us. Doing really good SEO is really like, you've heard it probably about 4 or 5 times today so far. So that, doing that good SEO, following EAT framework, and making sure that, speed to delivery is a key to us that we are always constantly battling when you're that highly regulated.
I think from a communications point of view, the levers aren't that different, right? You have your earned channels, your owned channels, and your paid channels, right? And it's really making sure to be consistent and to be strategic in how you're using those levers. So it's less about, it's building on what you were saying, Lou. Are we showing up? Are we using the right tone? Are we setting the right strategy? Are we responding to the right conversation, right? That's where that you can help inform these LLMs, you can help inform those answers, and you can help be part of the conversation. The channels haven't changed, it's just the strategy of how you do it well.
Very good. So I know everyone in the room just had the nice, delicious lunch outside, and so I have a question for the audience here. So how many of you are being asked to move faster at work? How we hear about AI, we hear about all these things. Let's just move faster. Can you please raise your hand if your company is asking you to move a bit faster in whether it's figuring out AI, figuring out what you need to do? All right, good. So some of you are shy, but can I see the hands again? How many of you need to move faster? Look at that. All right. So I'm going to go about 90% of people are being asked to move faster. So in that case, back to the audience, how do you balance AI and speed and really doing what all these folks in this room are being asked, while at the same time making sure that you have the governance and compliance, and especially in highly regulated industries, not getting yourself into hot water? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, cross-functional teams are your best friend. Right. I know in our company we have AI councils with legal, compliance, regulatory, comms.
Oh, that sounds fast. Yeah, no, sorry.
But no, it's true, right? I mean, I work for a huge company, so it's hard to steer that ship. But they are fast in terms of understanding the need here, and where you do see the quickness is the pivot and scale, right? Innovate and experiment often internally, and then deploy cautiously. And I think that we've seen a lot of success there, because when you are in a highly regulated industry, there's very little room for error. And so you learn internally, make those mistakes internally, report back so that people can have those learnings. Be as creative and as quick as you can there, so that you can then deploy with some level of confidence with the knowledge partners that you have within your company.
We don't get to experiment so much in pharma, right, as far as new tactics, right? So we really have to kind of plan ahead and making sure that, thinking ahead of what is the next thing, because there is obviously a huge push right now for AI, AEO, GEO, right? So what's that next thing even after GEO, right? So this way we're ahead of the game all the time. From a daily perspective of getting our speed of the content out there, as like we were saying before, is just really making sure that cross-functional collaboration is really key there, and you're nailing it at every step of the way, because you're always going to have that additional time at the end where you have to send it through review, and then it's going to get re-edited, and we're going to go back and forth, and we're going to do this again, right? So just staying ahead, thinking about and doing the good basics again of SEO, really making sure that everything that's produced is nice and clean and perfect, and getting that to almost the final product as quickly as possible.
So being a professor for a long time, I think training is hugely important. Everybody really needs to be trained on how to use AI, and everybody should be using it. Everybody in the organization should be experimenting with it, using it for their personal usage, figuring out what are the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that is the only way that everybody is going to row in the same direction, if you understand how to use it and you actually use it.
Yeah, I tell my students the same. Like, everybody has to learn the basics of AI. Same with my teams. But I think for us, what really helps with speed is getting the main things done well. And I have a good amount of people from my team here today. But I think one of the things we could all take as a source of pride is we're very good at our operational management, so that the BAU, the day-to-day stuff, flows through within a certain level of SLA and efficiency, and we constantly look at that to find where do we have operational breakdowns, where can we be a little more efficient, because then when the escalation comes through that, hey, we got to get this out the door tomorrow, or this has to move really fast, we can handle the hopefully rare exception. Now, we get a lot of exception requests, and we do have to push back, but if the operation is steady and works in a certain way that's predictable and operationally sound, those exceptions can make their way through so that you can react when you need to move faster.
Yeah, the basics are so important.
So what I'm hearing is stick to the basics, but education. So along the way, and even Renata, what you said, you might be here at this conference learning, but it's bringing back that education to the team because things are just changing so quickly. So continuing to do that. Very good. So a lot of the traditional metrics like clicks or rankings aren't really telling the full story anymore. How are you measuring success in this new AI and SEO landscape?
For us, it's authority signals, and this, something that Wei was talking about earlier today too, as well as, in pharma, there's no conversion metric that you can really quite grasp and track. So it's almost all awareness content, right? So we're looking at, we use Conductor. We go in there and we have topical silos that we track, and as long as we are raising amongst those topical silos, which we track, safety and data and treatment and brand terms, right? Especially unbranded terms. If they're trusting us more with our sites, then that's a good thing, right? They're using us in those answers more, and we're growing, and then we're doing the right thing, So that's something that we focus on, and I think that's it's going to vary across every industry, but for us, that's what we see as probably the most important factor.
And which tool again were you using?
Conductor.
Okay.
You'd never guess.
Very good. Who else would like to talk about how they're measuring success and any new KPIs that they're thinking about?
I mean, for us, we're going to be looking at the things that are part of the Conductor platform with mentions and source data, but we actually were just talking about this yesterday. I'm like, at the very basic, I want to understand that we are continuing to grow the pie. So how is overall traffic flowing from SEO? How is overall traffic flowing from the LLMs? And is the overall growth continuing in the right direction? Now, there's going to be seasonality, there's going to be movements up and down, but overall, if we are still moving the needle in the right direction, for us, that's fine, because I don't necessarily have a lead gen quota that I need to hit for the website. It's more campaign-based, but it's not like we're selling e-commerce stuff either. So we need to be part of the consideration set when somebody's doing a massive tax audit or professional services consulting need, and the measure of success is going to be further down the funnel. But for our purposes, if I can even just track, are we still increasing our share of voice in LLMs, in SEO, we're going in the right direction.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to add to that? No? So it's interesting. I was at this conference, I don't know, 15 years ago, and I'm starting to sound old. And it was really hardcore SEO digital marketers. Today, you know, this type of information from Conductor is really also useful for communication departments, PR, different things like that. Can you talk about any ways that you're using kind of this type of information to understand from a communication perspective?
Yeah, I think it's really important to make sure that you're part of the conversation, right? Communications is so much understanding where your audience is at and meeting them there, and trying to have that be an authentic way that you're connecting with them. And AI is a great tool to find where those white spaces are, right? And it's something that we definitely use to also be predictive of where we think the conversation is going so that we can prepare for that. And I think that from a communication standpoint, the more you can predict and the more authentic you can be, especially in a time where authenticity in AI is really a concern, the more legwork you can do in that to be prepared is really important.
Okay. Do you want to add something?
Yeah, so I don't think any of my comms people are in the room, fortunately. But there is a real need, like for forever. We've known as SEOs that PR is our friend, right? We could throw an embedded link in there, get some backlinks, and get some additional share of voice. It's so much more important now. And that coordination and understanding of how do you distribute your content and get an increased share of voice in the conversation on topics that are directly relevant to your day-to-day, well, how do we typically share that? It's PR. Right, so getting PR more out into the ether, more into the different ways that you can penetrate different content sites and news articles, getting more video content even out there, I think is going to start to feed the LLMs because they're adapting, they're creating more visual and video type things. They're going to start consuming that. Like, just wait. I mean, if you don't envision the AI version of TikTok is going to show up at some point, it's already being built, it's already showing up, and that's how younger people are going to consume information. It's not the text diatribe that comes out of ChatGPT. It's going to look very different and very soon.
Infographics, videos, all different kinds of formats.
Yes, but I also think that there's also going to be a yearning for engagement. I mean, look how much Reddit informs AI, right? And that is long form, and that's conversation. So I think, absolutely, we all know that visual medium is the most important, but I do think people are also looking for connection, and that's why authenticity is really an important piece of that, right? I mean, we are seeing those communities. You're most likely to trust your text threads than some other sources. So I think it's managing both.
All right, so I know we only have a couple minutes left, and so I do want to hear from everyone on this last question. For those who are just starting to navigate this space, what is the single most important step to future-proof brand trust?
I would say one of the things I think about a lot is radical transparency, is honesty and openness, and that is the way that you get people, customers, businesses to trust you. And you don't just do it when PR strikes and it's a crisis and you need it. You do it constantly and you make it a part of the culture of the organization, because if you don't, you will be found out. And that trust is sacrosanct, in my opinion.
I would say, do good SEO, taking everything she just said and applying that into a doable perspective, knowing your ICPs, knowing who you're talking to, and really connect with them and continue to put out good content, right, and good stuff. And that is always going to future-proof you. I mean, collectively, there's probably 25,000 years of SEO experience here, and we've all lived through the death of SEO for, I think we're on our 10th death of SEO, right? So, and if you notice, the brands that really don't get nervous about that stuff are the brands that continue to do good SEO. They don't really care. You're 80% there. You just got to shift a little bit to the next medium. Continue to do that good, solid SEO work. Stick your EAT, stick that framework. Keep that in mind all the time. and you're going to future-proof yourself, protect your brand, and continue to do well.
I agree with Lori. Well, I agree with both of you, but transparency.
She liked what Lori said better. No.
Transparency, of course, is really important because I also think it lends to the authenticity. I think that, it'll sound a little bit like a broken record in these 20 minutes, but authenticity is so important, especially when you're battling misinformation, attention, trying to build community. And so, to me, just remembering that AI is it's not what is AI doing for you, it's how is it enhancing things for you so that you still remember to show up as your authentic self with your brand.
All right, I think we have 30 seconds left.
So I agree with Anthony. No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you.
I had to throw it in there. But
Thanks, Lou.
Just be curious, learn. This is all brand spanking new, right? Nobody has all the answers. There is not one person in this room, nobody up here that could tell you exactly how to solve geo, AIO, any of it. We are all speculating and testing our way into what's going to work.
Even Google doesn't know, actually.
Yeah, Google does not know. Nobody has the answer, which means that we are all at the forefront of where this space is going. And so be curious, learn rapidly, fail rapidly, share what you know. Right? There are communities like this that exist digitally as well. Like, be a part of the conversation so that you can be part of the solution, because it is going to evolve. It's going to look very different in a year. It's going to look very, very different in 2. And the whole world of digital marketing continues to evolve. But beyond that, like, be your own advocate in your teams. Like, be the person that has an idea that challenges the norms, and look, maybe you're wrong, but at least you tried. And that might be the thing that changes how this all works in the future.
All right, well, thank you all for a great discussion, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.